Three souls.
One enemy remaining.
4 dead.
No fucking way.
No way.
Oh my
I'm back,
god.
YouTube.
0.6.
Hey guys, if you enjoy the educational Valorant content that I make and you want more to improve your Valorant skill, you can go to the Patreon link down in the description below to support me, but also find courses related to topics like mentality in Valorant, aim in Valorant, and a variety of other ones. Thanks for watching. Hey guys, so in today's video, I'm going to be showing you some of the top mechanical mistakes that individuals playing Valorant make in competitive, from all the way from Iron all the way up to Immortal. And so I'm going to be showing you some of these mistakes, and I'm also going to be teaching you how you should be fixing them and implementing new solutions in order to really rank up. And so before we start, I just want to let you guys know that mechanics are like really important in Valorant in my opinion. So if you're a lower rank, some of these fixes can be extremely potent in helping you rank up really fast. And even if you're high rank, it can still be very effective, maybe just not quite as rapidly ranking up. So to start us off, guys, I'm going to be starting with crouch spraying. This is something that you may or may not have an issue with, and you may or may not also be aware of it, right? So if you're not aware of it, just kind of start to kind of think, like when you're taking fights, like, do I do this? So crouch spraying, it's not always bad. Like you'll hear some pros, like I know Asuna would say, like, I love crouch spraying, or I love crouching whenever I shoot sometimes. It makes me more accurate. But again, remember, these guys are pros, right? You're not necessarily a pro. I'm not a pro. So more than likely, if you're crouch spraying consistently, like if every fight you're taking, especially at long ranges, looks like this, and especially like, you know, if you're back here, right, you're gonna notice that the spray accuracy is much worse, right? So if you're doing this is not good, right? If you're at a farther range, if you're at a much closer range, it looks a lot better. But still, if you're doing this every fight, what I would highly recommend is, one, to unbind crouch. This is what I'm doing right now. I had to rebind crouch for this video, so I literally can't crouch right now, okay? And this trains your brain to rewire itself, okay? There are minimal drawbacks of doing this. However, in my opinion, the drawbacks of doing this are significantly outweighed by the benefits. And the benefits are gonna be, but before I get to the benefits, let me also explain that you can rebind this to something else that's harder to click, and like other than control. Like you could bind it to alt or something that you're not used to having to hit to crouch, so you really have to be more conscious. But anyways, let's go and talk about the benefits of unbinding this, right? So instead of crouching, which is going to be your gut to do, you're either going to be standing still and shooting and spraying, which is also bad, or you're going to have to force yourself into learning how to strafe, which you can do in deathmatch, you can do it here in the range, or you can do probably in different aim trainers like Aim Labs or Kovacs or whatever other aim training you want. But basically what I would do first is come in the range, shoot, and just try to shoot this point in the middle. And what you're going to notice that I'm doing is I'm moving my crosshair. Whenever I'm moving to the left, I have to move my crosshair to the right to kind of adjust. And then whenever I move to the right, I move my crosshair to the left. And then I'm going to the left, I move to the right. You can kind of see how this goes, because I want to be right here, right? The person's going to be in the middle, and so I'm kind of strafing. And this is like a very simplified version. And then whenever you get good at hitting this in the middle like this, and kind of consistently hitting like around the same point, it doesn't have to be perfect at the start. And then what you're going to want to learn to do is you can kind of increase the variability of how you strafe, right? So make yourself less predictable basically. So if I'm just going like this, it's kind of predictable. But if I go like this, if I go for like a long strafe and then a short strafe, or a long strafe and then a short strafe, and make sure you don't do that, right? If you're getting shots up like this, it means you're shooting while you're still moving, so be careful of that. That might be an issue if you're kind of newer to Valorant. But then you can also strafe left twice, or strafe right twice to kind of throw your opponent off, because you need to imagine, right? If you're fighting someone who's just going like this, and they're doing the exact same distance and the exact same timings, then it's going to be easy for them to like place their crosshair and just click you, right? Whereas if you're kind of going like long, or you're going like twice in the same direction and you're sort of swapping up, it is kind of hard to do, right? But this is going to be one of the #1 things you need to swap out of from crouch spraying. So stop crouch spraying, start strafing instead in replacement of the crouch spraying, and also control your spraying, right? Like it's okay to spray sometimes, as some pros say, but remember, spraying is generally going to be better up close. It's generally going to be better with the Phantom. And you're going to want to practice this spray pattern as well. But generally at long distances, you're going to want to be tapping, maybe a little bit of strafing. And you don't always need to strafe, but tapping, maybe bursting, like 2 bursts. I usually am going to be tapping from long ranges, just try to hit the head. But yeah, guys, let's go ahead and move on to the next point. So the next mistake that I think a lot of people make, not even necessarily a mistake, but just something that people really lack, is good crosshair placement. So if you notice your crosshair placement not being great, if you don't know what crosshair placement is, it's just whenever you're expecting to fight an enemy, you really want to have your crosshair at headshot level. So if anyone was to cross my crosshair like this, all I have to do is click, right? I don't need to, like, if I'm aiming this low, then I don't need to adjust, which leaves room for more error, by the way, because if my crosshair is here and I flick and then I flick too high, this is very exaggerated, like if I flick too high like this, then it's going to be a problem. But if I'm like right here, say I'm a little bit new to crosshair placement, my crosshair is right here, all I have to do is barely adjust. But if my crosshair is just like perfect and I can, you know, and they're walking right into my crosshair, it makes it a lot easier. So there's a few things we want to learn here. One is you just need to be practicing this in deathmatch, or, you know, like if you don't already automatically know what headshot level is, like I just know that headshot level is going to look something like this, right? So I just kind of automatically know, and most people are going to know. But if you find yourself consistently aiming like this, and you know you're not sure what headshot level is, come into the range and aim like this, and just kind of get a feel. And the way that you can do this is up close. You're gonna realize, like, you're never gonna be like more than this close to an enemy, but you're gonna realize whenever you're closer to someone, like if you're point blank to someone, you're gonna have to actually aim higher to be in the center of their head. Whereas if you see, if I walk back looking at the same thing, this is really high, so it's actually going to be lower. So if I'm like this close and then I aim at the center of their head and I walk away, you're going to notice my crosshair actually goes up. So the closer you are to an enemy, the higher you actually need to aim, just by a little bit. This doesn't change things a whole lot, but this is one tiny nuance that you need to kind of take into account whenever you're trying to train your crosshair placement. So if you're farther away, you don't need to aim as high. This generally doesn't matter too much, and you're generally going to be in somewhere like medium to semi-close range. Like, you're generally not going to be super far away, but if you are, just remember that the headshot level is going to be slightly different. And again, this is something you can also be practicing in deathmatch. Just be pre-aiming corners. Like, if someone walks around the corner, you shouldn't have to move up like this to hit a kill. You shouldn't have to flick up, right? See, you saw that I missed that, right? Because my crosshair is, I have to flick, all right? I have to flick, and then it just leaves room for more error. So the other important thing about crosshair placement is going to be that in a lot of games, there are different, or in a lot of maps, sorry, there are a lot of different elevations. So, you know, although this range is completely flat, although a lot of your aim trainers are going to be completely flat, most of the maps have some kind of elevation or de-elevation. So what I mean by that is, like, you're either going to be fighting from somewhere that's up top, or they're going to be fighting from somewhere that's up top, or you're going to be fighting from somewhere that's lower than them. There's actually no, actually right here, right? So there's a little bit of a slope down, which is going to change, right? If if I go up, you see that I'm not at headshot level anymore. So you either need to begin to kind of consciously train your brain to do this, and then eventually it's going to become a subconscious process of aiming at headshot level, depending on how elevated or de-elevated you or your opponent is, right? This might sound really complicated right now, but really all that I'm telling you guys here is that you need to kind of, like, be aware of, like, okay, is there a slope here? If there's a slope here, then I need to, like, if there's a slope and I'm elevated, I need to be aiming down a little bit more, right? Like, maybe like this. Whereas if I'm, you know, you see, I automatically kind of move my crosshair up, and if I come down, like, I can move my crosshair back up, right? If that makes sense, right? So this might be a little confusing, but just kind of be aware that depending on how the elevations are in the game, you should adjust your crosshair placement accordingly. And again, guys, the most important tip that I have for you here is practice, practice, practice. Go into deathmatch, come into here, practice just getting familiar, shooting heads at this headshot range, maybe a different range, distances. It will really help. Deathmatch is probably the best thing you can do. So for the third and final mistake that you're likely making, and this goes for a lot of ranks as well, but especially some of the lower ranks, and I found myself doing this recently on the new character, Clove. So basically, this mistake is not utilizing one or multiple of your abilities, and then also properly utilizing them. So mainly we're talking here about not using certain abilities. This is like a big deal if you're just not using certain abilities. A big one for Jet, I'm going to talk about a few different characters, but a big one for Jet is not using knives because you fear like it's going to be too hard. Or you know, you just kind of fear, like, I don't know what it might be, but I used to do this as well, where it's like you kind of just don't want to use knives because it feels like unfamiliar, right? It's just maybe that it's the unknown, but really you have to realize that knives save you a full buy for yourself or for a teammate, and all you need is armor, and you don't even always need full armor, and this is just like a free rifle, and it's actually better than a Phantom or a Vandal. So keep that in mind. You can also use updraft with it. You're not going to see a lot of people do this, but this is something you can practice with in the range. But make sure you're popping knives, right? And this doesn't just apply to knives. Like, if you find yourself not smoking and doing a smoke dash to entry into sight, that's also something that you're going to want to do. If you find that you don't really use updraft to do anything with, or you don't use updraft with knives, that's something you want to consider. And then, you know, for a different example, like I recently was playing Clove. One of the abilities that I did not use at all, really, was this ability, the Duckeeh. And that's actually kind of sad because it's a really good ability. So I can just one-shot all these people now. So yeah, this might sound like a really simplistic tip, but like it's something that I think really does affect a lot of people, whether you realize it or not. Another example for KO might be that you don't use your nade very often. I've seen this in people that I coach recently. Like people will use their. It's very easy to throw a knife, right? It's very hard to throw a bad knife because, you know, like just throw it and then it hits a lot of people in a big zone. But grenade is a little different. You might be worried about hitting your teammate. You might, you know, you might not be sure where to throw it. But it's better to throw a bad one and learn from it than to never throw one at all and just not be getting much out of your utility. The other part of this tip is going to be properly using your utility, right? So that ties into like, okay, so I threw a bad one, right? It didn't quite hit people. Maybe I didn't know, like, maybe I didn't really understand how, like, you know, how far it went whenever I threw it because I'm just new to this agent. So like maybe I thought that this would throw like right here, but actually went way too far. Maybe I didn't know that it would bounce. But the big thing here is learning. Maybe like you didn't know the radius. Learning more about the ability, learning when it's effective to use, like learning, okay, maybe this is good on the spike, maybe I should learn a lineup. Don't necessarily need to learn a lineup, by the way. Maybe I can, you know, maybe I can learn how to pop flash instead of just always throwing my left click flash. Like, okay, maybe I'm flashing teammates. So understanding like how to properly utilize your abilities, and again, I can't go into every agent here. I'm sorry if I didn't cover your agent, but please go into YouTube, look up guides from other people, or if you want one from me, look, just leave that in the comments. And I will make an ability guide for that agent. But yeah, guys, this is 3 simple mistakes that you could easily improve. Not necessarily easily, but over time easily improve. And I think it'll really help your overall skill level and help you rank up. So see you guys in the next video. Peace.